I've seen men lose their minds in war zones. I've seen hands trembling while wrapping wounds, voices cracking over failing radios, and eyes going empty after the fifth sleepless night. But nothing, not the screams, not the sirens, not even the smell of blood in the desert prepared me for sitting in that leather chair while a lawyer read my sister's name next to $6 million. I didn't flinch. I'd learned not to. Not when bullets were flying, and not now when betrayal landed clean across the face. But inside, something sharp twisted in my chest. Not because I wanted the money. I've never cared about numbers in a bank. But because of what came next. And to Clara Jensen, the lawyer paused. He didn't look at me. That's when I knew. She receives nothing. I heard Vanessa exhale through her nose like it was a private joke. Marjorie, our mother, didn't even pretend to hide her smile. The same smile she wore the night Dennis broke my jaw and she asked if I had provoked him. The click in my jaw still comes back sometimes when I chew. It came back right then. My mouth stayed shut, my spine straight, uniform ironed. The ribbons on my chest told a story no one in that room had ever listened to. The lawyer shuffled his papers like he couldn't wait to disappear. That concludes the formal reading, he said. But Mr. Arthur Jensen, your grandfather, left a separate document, a video message. It was requested to be played after the reading should Clara be present. I felt the oxygen drain from the room. Vanessa's posture changed, her head tilted slightly, calculating. Marjorie leaned forward as if the words might be a trick. My fingers tightened against the arms of the chair. I hadn't known about any video. Grandpa hadn't said a word in his last days, not about this. I'd sat next to him during those final weeks, brought him fresh coffee, held his hand when the pain meds kicked in too late. He hadn't spoken of legacy or property, just the land. The way the trees moved at dusk, the smell of wet soil after the rain. Now the screen flickered to life. Static buzzed. Then he appeared. Grandpa, wearing his favorite checkered flannel shirt, glasses slipping down his nose, eyes sharp as ever. "If you're seeing this," he said, "I'm gone. And I bet there's a mess sitting in that room right now." He coughed once. "Let me make something very clear. Clara got nothing in the will because the will you just heard wasn't mine." Vanessa sat up straight. Marjorie's jaw clenched. "They forced that paper through," Grandpa said. "They bullied the lawyer, manipulated the process. But I left the real documents where they'd be safe, and I left this video to make sure Clara knows the truth." My throat burned. Grandpa looked into the camera. Not just looked, saw. "Clara, you are my legacy. You are the only one who showed up without asking for anything. You are the one who stayed when my bones hurt and my hands shook. Everything I built evergreened, the land, the systems, the plans, I left them to you." The screen froze for a moment, then cut to black. No music. No fanfare. Just silence. It was louder than any battlefield. Marjorie's hand slammed the table. Vanessa's voice rose like a blade. "This is a joke. This is manipulation." But I sat still, heart pounding like thunder under my ribs. The real war had just begun. And this time, I wasn't leaving the battlefield. I was claiming it. The thing about toxic families is they don't start with fire. They start with silence. With a mother who tells you to lower your voice when you cry after being hit. With a sister who smiles sweetly while taking things that aren't hers. With a stepfather who breaks your jaw and then blames your attitude. I was 14 the first time Dennis hit me. It wasn't a slap. It was a closed fist across the face that left me spitting blood into the kitchen sink. Marjorie had walked in, looked at the bruise blooming like a storm cloud on my cheek, and said, "You need to stop provoking him." That night, I locked the bathroom door, stared at my swollen reflection, and made a decision I would get out. Not tomorrow, not in college, but the moment I was old enough. Vanessa, of course, was different. She never got hit. She never got yelled at. If she broke something, it was an accident. If I raised my voice, it was aggression. Vanessa was the porcelain daughter, the image Marjorie projected to the world. I was the crack in the mirror. When I told them I was applying to West Point, the reaction was as cold as the kitchen tile under my bare feet. Dennis laughed. Marjorie whispered, "Soldiers don't belong in this family." Vanessa just asked if she could have my room once I left. I did leave. On my 18th birthday, I packed everything I owned into one duffel and never looked back. For a while, the military became my refuge. Structure, purpose, respect. Things my home never gave me. I trained hard, served overseas, learned how to lead, how to fight, how to stay alive. I earned medals, commendations, the kind of achievements Marjorie never acknowledged. She never visited, never called. The only person who sent letters was Grandpa Arthur. His handwriting was shaky, but his words were strong. "Proud of you, kid," he wrote. "Keep your chin up. They don't know what they lost." Years passed. I came home once briefly for Vanessa's college graduation. She was radiant in her cap and gown, surrounded by flowers and applause. I stood in the back unnoticed until Dennis spotted me. He asked if I was lost. I left before the ceremony ended. The only reason I came back to Savannah for good was Grandpa's diagnosis. Cancer. Fast. Aggressive. I put in for early leave and moved into his guest room, driving him to appointments, managing his medications, holding his hand during the long nights when the pain took his voice. Marjorie visited once. Vanessa never came. "Too busy," she said. "Besides, hospitals creep me out. I never expected anything in return. Not money, not recognition. Just time. Time to say goodbye to the only person who saw me, who remembered who I was before the silence hardened me." One night near the end, Grandpa turned to me, eyes glassy from morphine. He said I should have done more to protect you. I told him he did enough, that he was enough. What I didn't say was that his words were the only ones that ever felt like home. He died 2 days later. The funeral was small. Vanessa arrived late in heels too high for a gravesite wearing sunglasses that hid nothing. Marjorie clung to her like the whole event was a photo op. Dennis stood off to the side, arms folded, jaw tight. I delivered the eulogy. No one clapped. Afterward, Marjorie pulled me aside. "Don't expect anything," she said. "Your grandfather was generous, but he knew where real loyalty came from. I wanted to ask if loyalty meant abandoning your father when he was dying, but I bit my tongue. I'd done that a lot in that house." Back at the old family home, nothing had changed. The same heavy curtains. The same oil paintings of ancestors who'd probably been just as cruel. Vanessa walked through the halls like she owned them. She probably believed she did. At dinner, they toasted Grandpa like he'd been a business partner, not blood. Marjorie raised her glass. "To Arthur, may his assets serve the right people." I didn't drink. I watched. Memorized. Vanessa laughed too loud. Dennis said little. Marjorie gave me the occasional side glance like she couldn't quite believe I'd shown up. That night, I slept at the guest house. I couldn't stay in the main building. Too many memories. Too much rot behind the lemon-scented polish. I found one of Grandpa's notebooks tucked in a drawer. Inside were plans, diagrams, notes about the Evergreen Project. His handwriting had wobbled near the end, but his mind was still sharp. He'd been building something bigger than land. He was building a legacy, and now, sitting in that lawyer's office watching my sister smirk while my mother smothered her in diamonds, I realized they hadn't just stolen my name from that will. They'd tried to erase every trace of who he trusted, who he valued, who stayed. The funny thing about trauma is it teaches you to be quiet when you're in pain. But that day in that leather chair, the silence started to crack, and I could feel something underneath it. Not rage. Not grief. Power, the kind you earn, the kind they could never fake. The room smelled like old money and furniture wax. Polished wood, brass handles, a glass pitcher of lemon water that no one touched. The lawyer's office was designed to feel dignified, but to me, it felt like a trap, quiet, sterile, calculated. I sat across from the heavy mahogany desk, flanked by the people who had spent their lives either hitting me or pretending I didn't exist. Vanessa sat to my left in a cream-colored blouse and pearl earrings, legs crossed like she was posing for a magazine shoot. Marjorie wore dark navy with a brooch I recognized from Grandpa's study, a silver oak leaf he once said belonged to his mother. I doubted she asked before taking it. Dennis hovered near the back wall, arms folded, jaw locked like a bulldog guarding trash. The lawyer, Mr. Monroe, cleared his throat. He was an old man with soft hands and a tight voice, and he adjusted his glasses before opening the folder in front of him. "We are gathered today to read the final testament of Arthur Jensen," he began, voice neutral. Please understand that what I am about to read is a legally binding document filed with the county and witnessed by two independent parties. I already knew what was coming. Or thought I did. I expected a clean sweep everything to Vanessa, nothing to me. But part of me, the part Grandpa raised on bedtime stories and gardening lessons, still hoped, still held on to the belief that he would not let them erase me. To my beloved granddaughter, Vanessa Jensen, Mr. Monroe read, I bequeath the primary family estate located at 711 Carter's Glen, including the contents therein, all stocks associated with the Jensen Family Trust, and a direct deposit of $6 million to her personal account. Vanessa let out the softest hum of satisfaction, her fingers brushing invisible dust from her sleeve. To Marjorie Jensen, my daughter-in-law, he continued, I leave the antique silver collection, my personal library, and the wine cellar inventory. Marjorie nodded tight-lipped victorious. And to Clara Jensen. The pause wasn't long, but it stretched across my skin like frost. Clara receives. No monetary inheritance. No gasp. No apology. Just the scratching of pen on paper as Mr. Monroe flipped to the next page. My vision narrowed. Not from shock I'd been prepared for betrayal, but from the finality of hearing it spoken aloud. 6 million. Property. Assets. And nothing for me. Nothing for the woman who held Grandpa's hand when the morphine failed. Nothing for the one who planted his tomatoes, changed his IVs, cleaned the blood when he coughed too hard. I sat still. Military training kept my face calm, but inside, something fractured. There is an addendum, Mr. Monroe added quickly. A request made prior to the signing of this document. A video recording to be played only if Clara is present. That got their attention. Vanessa shifted in her seat, the pearls at her neck suddenly tight. Marjorie leaned forward, lips pressed. Dennis scowled suspicious. Mr. Monroe pressed a button on a small remote, and the TV on the far wall blinked to life. Static. Then the screen resolved into an image that nearly broke me. Grandpa. Not sick and sunken like at the end, but clear-eyed, wearing his flannel shirt, sitting in his sunroom with sunlight dancing across the floor. If you're seeing this, he began. It means the will they just read was a lie. Marjorie's breath caught. Vanessa sat back hard. They forged it, pushed it through when I was too weak to argue. I tried to fight it, but the lawyers they brought, people I didn't trust, made it impossible. So I made this. He leaned forward. Clara, everything I built is meant for you. Evergreen, the land, the patents, the research. You're the only one who didn't ask for anything, which is why you deserve everything. I left the real documents with Monroe's private files. If you're watching this, then he found them. The screen cut to black. Silence fell. Then Marjorie exploded. This is a fabrication, she barked. You can't be serious. This isn't legal. That old man was confused. He had cancer, for God's sake. It's notarized and time-stamped, Mr. Monroe replied calmly. And a second will matching the claims made in the video was located in a sealed envelope in my private vault, with your signatures, Ms. Jensen, confirming you witnessed its contents. Vanessa turned white. That was for something else, she said quickly. He said it was about charitable donations. It wasn't, Mr. Monroe said, placing the envelope gently on the table. This supersedes the prior reading. He looked at me. Clara, per Arthur's last instructions, you are now the sole beneficiary of the Jensen Evergreen Trust and the primary caretaker of all associated properties and holdings. My heartbeat roared in my ears. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I'd been trained not to react. You can't do this, Marjorie hissed. She's not competent. She's been damaged. She's unstable. Dennis, say something. Dennis didn't speak. He just stared at the floor. Vanessa stood abruptly, the chair scraping. This is robbery, she said. This is manipulation. No, I said quietly, finally breaking the silence. This is justice. Vanessa laughed bitterly. You think this makes us even? You think this makes you family again? No, I replied. I think it makes you irrelevant. The lawyer handed me the envelope. My name was written on it in Grandpa's shaky hand. Clara. The room spun slightly, not from dizziness, but from the weight of finally being seen, of being chosen, of being enough. As they stormed out Vanessa in angry heels, Marjorie seething. Dennis silent, I stayed in my seat. Fingers on the paper, heart steady. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was standing. The thing about revenge is that real power doesn't shout. It doesn't scream in your face or punch you across a dinner table. It waits. It plans. It studies its enemy like a sniper through a scope, one breath at a time. I left the lawyer's office with the legal documents clutched in my hand and a storm brewing in my chest. For years, I had walked through life as a ghost in my own family. Now, with my grandfather's final move, I had the power to flip the entire game board, but I wasn't going to waste it on petty drama. I wanted legacy. I wanted exposure, and I wanted them to drown in the very lies they'd built. The next day, I drove straight to Evergreen Grandpa's pride and now mine. It wasn't just farmland, it was innovation. He had spent years developing sustainable systems, smart irrigation, modular greenhouses, energy-efficient harvest tech. The entire operation had been frozen under court review during his illness, but with the rightful documents in my hands, I could restart everything. I contacted his old project manager, Mr. Barrett, a soft-spoken man in his 60s who used to work at NASA before retiring into agritech. He cried when I told him I was taking over. "Arthur said it had to be you," he said. "Said you understood the land better than anyone." I nodded. "And I need your help bringing it back." Within days, I had a team reviewing the systems. We reopened the research center, republished the patents under my name as successor trustee, and contacted the university Grandpa had partnered with for grants. Meanwhile, I paid a forensic accountant, someone I knew from my military days, to look into the Jensen family trust. What he found was a pile of rot-forged signatures, suspicious withdrawals, manipulation of Grandpa's medications to push through legal loopholes while he was under hospice care. All of it connected back to Marjorie and Vanessa. I didn't go public, not yet. I needed the timing to be perfect. I also began attending local civic events, quietly building credibility, forming relationships with journalists, professors, and council members. Grandpa had always said, influence isn't loud, it's consistent. While I worked, Vanessa fumed. She began a subtle PR campaign to smear my name, whispered to family friends that I had PTSD, that I was unstable, that Grandpa had been senile and manipulated. She gave interviews to local society blogs claiming the will had been corrupted. I stayed silent, but I watched. I had recordings, screenshots, testimonies, even a hidden camera video from my last week caring for Grandpa where he clearly said they're trying to take it all. If anything happens, you fight Clara. You fight smart. That clip would matter later. My chance came during the annual Jensen Foundation Gala, a fundraiser my family hosted every year to show off their wealth and pretend to care about charity. It was usually held at the Grand Ballroom downtown with glass sculptures and lobster flown in from Maine. I had declined the invite, of course, but this year, as sole beneficiary and legal head of the Evergreen Project, I held the controlling stake in the foundation. I called the board, reviewed the books, and quietly inserted myself as the keynote speaker citing Grandpa's final wishes. Vanessa didn't know. Marjorie didn't see it coming. They assumed it would be some mayor or tech donor. When the lights dimmed and my name was announced, I stepped onto the stage in a black dress, hair tied back, military-type papers in hand. Vanessa's face contorted. Marjorie gripped the edge of her seat. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, voice steady through the mic. "Thank you for being here to honor Arthur Jensen's legacy. Tonight, I'd like to share the truth behind his final days." I played the video, Grandpa's last words recorded on the porch, explaining the forgery, the betrayal, the real will. Then, I displayed the financial charts how Marjorie had funneled money out of the trust under false pretenses. I pulled up the medication records, the timestamps, the video of Grandpa whispering that he feared being silenced. This, I said, is not just a story of money. It's a story of who shows up when no one's watching, of what family really means, and of how silence finally breaks. The room fell silent. Then erupted. People turned to Marjorie with horror. Journalists rushed to me for copies of the documents. A professor from the university called my name and offered partnership grants on the spot. Vanessa tried to leave. Security stopped her at my quiet request. "She's not under arrest," I said calmly. "But she's no longer welcome to speak on behalf of the Jensen Foundation." Her face flushed red. "You think this erases everything she hissed?" "No," I said. "It reveals it." That night I went home to Evergreen alone. No celebrations, just a quiet walk under the stars where Grandpa used to sit and sip black coffee. The land felt alive, like it had been waiting, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was fighting. I felt like I was leading. The days after the gala were strangely quiet, but I knew better than to trust silence when it came from predators. Marjorie had always been more serpent than storm. Her venom came in the form of whispers, paperwork, strategic pity. Vanessa, on the other hand, was fire with no control, and together they would not go down without dragging teeth. The media had exploded after the event. Grandpa's video circulated online. News anchors quoted his last words on local channels. Articles praised the granddaughter who exposed a family empire of lies. But I also knew behind closed doors they were scrambling. And I was right. On the third morning, I got a visit. Not from a reporter, not from the police, but from a man in a charcoal gray suit with a badge tucked discreetly inside his jacket. "Ms. Jensen," he said, "I'm Agent Parks with the Georgia Financial Crimes Division. Mind if I speak with you?" I let him in. We sat at the old oak table Grandpa used for chess. His eyes scanned the room, and I could already sense what he wasn't saying out loud. We received an anonymous tip about irregularities in the Jensen Foundation accounts. It triggered an automatic audit. "Let me guess," I said, folding my arms. The tip came with documents claiming I embezzled funds since inheriting Evergreen. He didn't confirm. He didn't have to. "That's a serious accusation," he said. "And completely fabricated," I replied. "Which I can prove." I handed him a file I'd already prepared. Ledger copies. Dates. My forensic accountant's full report, witness signatures, video timestamps of Grandpa handing me the keys literally and legally to everything. Parks raised an eyebrow. "You were expecting this?" "Of course I was," I said. "They forged a will once. They won't stop at fake ledgers." He took the file and stood. "You may want to stay accessible. There may be interviews." "I'll be here," I said. Unlike them. The same afternoon, I received a cease and desist letter from Marjorie's attorney claiming defamation, slander, and emotional distress. I laughed out loud. Vanessa posted a long, weepy Instagram video accusing me of manipulating a dying man, cutting it with old childhood photos of her and Grandpa that she had never taken care to collect while he was alive. The comments were savage. Didn't even show up when he was sick. "Jealous much sister's a war vet. You sell teeth-whitening kits on TikTok." It wasn't the public I feared. It was the legal games. Marjorie had money, connections, and no shame. So I fought on every level. I contacted the DA and handed over everything. I had the truth. The truth, when properly documented, is heavier than 1,000 lies. I filed a lawsuit for will fraud, elder abuse, and financial exploitation. The media picked it up, and when the court date was set, I made sure it was public. On the morning of the hearing, I dressed in full uniform, not for attention, for armor. I walked into that courthouse with my spine straight and my jaw tight, the same jaw Dennis broke, now healed with steel beneath the bone. Marjorie sat with 2 lawyers. Vanessa wore all black like she was at a funeral. And in a way, she was burying the version of herself that believed she could do anything and never face consequence. The courtroom air was tense. The judge reviewed the files. The lawyers debated over the legality of the video. But when the accountant was called to the stand and laid out the money trail, every forged transfer, every shell company, every dollar that vanished into Marjorie's consulting fund, the energy shifted. The final blow came when Barrett Grandpa's project partner took the stand. He spoke clearly with dates and memories. Arthur told me to trust Clara, that Vanessa had been pressuring him, that his daughter had been giving him the wrong meds to keep him foggy. The silence that followed was devastating. Even the bailiff looked shaken. The judge leaned forward. "This case will proceed to a full civil trial. and I'm submitting findings to the state's attorney for potential criminal prosecution." Marjorie paled. Vanessa stood up shouting, "You're ruining our family!" She screamed at me. "You were never one of us." I didn't flinch. I looked her in the eyes and said, "No, Vanessa. You're right. I was never one of you. I was better." Security escorted them out. I didn't celebrate. I just walked out the back of the courthouse, pulled my hair out of its bun, and let the sun hit my face. There was still more to come. But for the first time in decades, I could breathe. You can only run from truth for so long before it catches you like a wave swallowing the shore. After the court hearing, Marjorie and Vanessa retreated into silence, but I knew it was the quiet before collapse. Their lawyers filed motions to delay, tried to settle behind closed doors, offered hush money disguised as reconciliation funds. I declined every time. This wasn't about money. This was about stripping their masks off in the most public way possible. Weeks later, the criminal investigation intensified. Dennis, silent through most of the drama, was finally called in. Under pressure, he cracked like cheap glass, confessed to being coerced into signing fake documents, confirmed that Marjorie had switched Grandpa's medications with sedatives to weaken his ability to object to the forged will, claimed Vanessa didn't know, but the text messages retrieved from his old phone told another story. "Just stall," Clara Vanessa had texted. "Once the papers are through, she can't undo it." That text became the final nail in their coffin. The prosecution announced formal charges: financial elder abuse while fraud, obstruction of justice. Their assets were frozen. The press had a field day. Vanessa tried one last trick, scheduled an interview with a national network, claiming she was the real victim of a veteran sister with rage issues and a vendetta. The network canceled after I released footage of Vanessa at the gala, screaming obscenities while being escorted out. Public opinion turned fast and hard. Then came the final confrontation. It didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened on the porch of Grandpa's house, the place he and I built planter boxes where he taught me how to tell the difference between weeds and wildflowers. I found Marjorie waiting there, sunglasses on heels, digging into the soft earth like she didn't care what she destroyed. "You win," she said, voice brittle. "Is that what you want to hear?" I didn't answer. I stood still, hands in my jacket, letting the silence speak louder. "You ruined us," she spat. "You think you're righteous, Clara. You think this makes you better?" "No," I said finally. "I think it makes me honest. Something you've never been." She shook her head slowly. "He never loved you more. That's what you think." "But he pitied you. That's why he gave you everything, because you were broken and lonely and sad." Her words cut deep. "But I'd been wounded by sharper lies before. He gave me everything because I earned it," I replied, "because I was there when he was dying, when no one else was, not you, not Vanessa, just me holding his hand, listening to him apologize for not protecting me from you." Her face tightened, but I didn't stop. "You know what scares you the most, that someone saw you for what you really are. And now everyone else does too." She took off her sunglasses, then eyes red and tired. "They're going to charge me." "I could go to prison." "Yes," I said. "You could, and you should, Clara," she said, voice cracking. "For the first time, we're still family." I stared at her, then past her to the lemon tree Grandpa planted on my 12th birthday. The fruit was finally ripe. "No," I said softly. "Family doesn't leave bruises and call it discipline, doesn't steal and call it inheritance, doesn't gaslight and call it love." She didn't reply, just walked past me, heels sinking into the grass with each step like the earth itself rejected her. A week later, she was arrested at her country club. Vanessa was picked up during a wellness retreat in Arizona. The trial was set for early fall, and I made sure it would be open to the public. The Evergreen Project expanded. With new grants, we launched a veteran rehabilitation program using sustainable farming to help soldiers transition to civilian life. I spoke at conferences, donated part of the estate to the local university's ethics program. I even restored the old chapel on the property and named it after Grandpa. On the day it reopened, I stood in front of the stained glass window he designed, sunlight warming my skin, and whispered, "I did it. I kept my promise." The press called me the Quiet Storm. Said I didn't scream for justice, I revealed it piece by piece until no one could deny what they'd seen. I never responded to the letters Marjorie sent from jail. Vanessa tried to appeal. It failed. I didn't need revenge anymore. Because the truth had done something more permanent than anger ever could it rewrote the legacy. The Jensen name no longer meant silence. It meant resilience. And I carried it now not like a burden, but like armor. Some nights, even with everything quiet and the legal battles won, I'd still wake up with the taste of blood in my mouth. Not real blood, phantom pain. The kind that lives in the bones long after the bruise has faded. Trauma doesn't ask for permission before it knocks. And mine had a name. Dennis. I remember the night like it's carved into my spine. I was 23, just out of basic training home for Grandpa's birthday. I'd come back in uniform thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd see me differently. Not as the weird, too quiet girl they used to mock. Not as the girl who cried too easily or read too much. But as a soldier, someone they couldn't ignore. The dinner was tense as always. Vanessa made passive jokes about my haircut. Marjorie kept correcting my posture. Dennis drank too much wine, leaned back in his chair, and asked, "So, what's it like being the Army's charity case?" Grandpa tried to cut in, but I brushed it off. I told myself, be strong. Be silent. Let them lose interest. But Dennis didn't stop. He stood up suddenly, slammed his hand on the table, and called me a failure. Said I'd always be broken. Said even the Army would toss me aside. And then he did it. He grabbed my arm, twisted it hard, and when I yanked free, he punched me in the face. I hit the floor. No one moved. The room was dead quiet. Vanessa gasped but didn't stand. Marjorie said, "Dennis, please." Grandpa rushed to me, helped me up, touched my jaw. It was already swelling. No one called the police. No one said sorry. Later that night, Grandpa drove me to the hospital. I lied to the nurse. Said I fell down the stairs, but Grandpa knew. And on the way home, he didn't speak until we reached the driveway. Then he turned to me and said, "You know who you are. Don't let them take that from you." I never forgot that. It was the first time I realized strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers bruised but steady. I returned to base the next day and didn't come back for a long time. Grandpa kept in touch, sent letters, called when he could. But the rest of them, they erased me. Pretended I'd abandoned the family, told relatives I had gone rogue, that I couldn't handle being part of the Jensen legacy. I kept all those wounds in my chest. Let them calcify into something quiet and cold. Until the call came, Grandpa's voice frail, telling me the cancer was back. That he didn't have long. I dropped everything and drove through the night to Evergreen. He opened the door himself, thinner, pale. But when he saw me, he smiled. "Clara," he said, arms outstretched. "You came home." For weeks I cared for him, changed the IVs, cleaned the sheets, read to him when his eyes were too tired. And in those moments he spoke honestly. About his regrets. About the years he should have protected me and didn't. About Marjorie's manipulation. Vanessa's obsession with legacy. Dennis's violence. "You were always the best of us," he said once, "because you never needed to be seen to do the right thing." Those nights by his bedside rewrote part of me. Gave me back pieces I didn't realize were missing. When he passed, I held his hand, kissed his forehead, promised I'd carry the truth, that I'd burn down every lie they'd built. And now, standing here years later, with the land breathing again and the air no longer haunted by silence, I knew I'd kept that promise. The first rain came in October. It fell gently across the fields of Evergreen like a baptism, rinsing away years of decay, of betrayal, of silence. I stood under the tin roof of the West greenhouse, arms crossed, watching droplets slide down the glass and settle on fresh tomato vines and rows of new lettuce. The land was alive again. So was I. People sometimes ask me now if I feel vindicated, if getting justice was enough. But justice isn't a finish line. It's a clearing in the woods, a place to rest before the next climb. The trial ended with Marjorie and Vanessa both convicted. Marjorie sentenced to 5 years for financial elder abuse, Vanessa to 18 months for fraud and obstruction. Dennis took a plea deal and disappeared from the headlines. They appealed. Lost. then vanished like cowards often do when stripped of their illusions. I didn't attend the final sentencing. I was busy overseeing our new veterans greenhouse training program. Young men and women, some with fresh scars, some with ones no one could see, were now learning how to grow again. Not just crops. Themselves. We called it Project Resilience. I had taken the darkest chapter of my life and planted it like a seed, and it bloomed. On the 1-year anniversary of Grandpa's memorial, we held a service on the hill behind the chapel. The sun dipped low over the fields, golden and forgiving. I spoke briefly, holding his old cane in one hand and a folded note in the other. It wasn't long or poetic, just the truth. You taught me that legacy isn't about blood or money. It's about what you build when no one's watching. The crowd was quiet. The wind carried his favorite jazz song from the chapel speakers. I closed my eyes, and for a moment I could almost hear him humming along. Later, as twilight fell, I walked through the orchard, now full with ripe lemons and budding pears. The air smelled like rain and soil, pure, whole. My jaw still ached sometimes when the weather turned cold, a ghost of Dennis's last blow. But pain, I've learned, is a reminder that you survived, that your body remembers what your spirit overcame. At the edge of the field, a little girl from the new Tennant family ran toward me, mud on her shoes and a flower in her fist. "Miss Clara," she yelled, holding up the bloom. "I picked this for you." I knelt, took the flower, smiled. "Thank you. It's beautiful." "Are you the boss here?" she asked, curious eyes blinking up at me. I thought for a moment, then nodded. "Something like that." She grinned, ran off again. And in that second, with a flower in my hand and laughter in the air, I realized what I had built wasn't just revenge or restitution. It was sanctuary, a place where the cycle ended, where no one had to flinch when the phone rang, where no one was told they were worthless, where truth didn't need to scream to be believed. The sun dipped lower. Lights flicked on in the farmhouse. I headed home, boots crunching over gravel, heart finally quiet. Grandpa once told me the strongest people he ever met weren't loud or fearless. They were the ones who kept showing up, who stayed kind even when no one noticed, who told the truth even when it cost them everything. I hadn't just inherited his land. I had inherited his spine, his will, his grace. And now I would pass it forward, not in courtrooms, not in viral clips, but in every seed planted. Every veteran healed, every child who grew up knowing safety wasn't a privilege, it was a right. The past didn't own me anymore. I owned it. And the future was mine to write.